Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Well, good morning. My name is Tandy Trower. I'm the General Manager of the Microsoft Robotics Group, and I'm pleased this morning to introduce John Wang, professor from the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at Michigan State University. John and I met each other at a recent set of presentations that we were both invited to at General Motors, and had some very interesting discussion. John is investigating approaches in terms of learning behavior applied to robotics in some very interesting ways, somewhat non-traditional ways that I've kind of investigated prior to robotics, and then my interest in looking into how computing models could be inspired by biological models. So John is here this morning to share some of the research that they've been doing and applying this to learning behavior and to robotics. So at this point I'd like to invite John to come up here and share some of his research with us. John, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tandy. It's my pleasure to be here. I've been here a few times before. Some of the material might be mentioned earlier. But this time, the new result will be mainly on the representation generation using biologically plausible models. I will cover 5 sections of the materials. I'll talk about first motivation, why epigenetic development. Then I'll talk about the mental architecture that could be very useful for enable robots to develop its mental skills, and also could be useful for understanding how the human mind works in terms of neuroscience and in psychology. And I will explain a little bit about the detail of the developmental programs, in other words, the gene program in terms of functions, how to simulate the function of developmental program in the, represented by the genes. Then I mentioned a few examples of experiments, although much experiments has been published, and I do not have time to cover all the explained results. So just a few examples. And I will mention some implications to commercialization that some of the audience might be interested. So first, motivations. Now, why we call it epigenetic? It's a term that it's invented in developmental psychology. Epi means environment, external, and genetic means from the gene. So in this sense, it's both the interaction with the genetic material and the environment that make the development takes place. So there are 2 types of things. One is the human or evolution that provide the gene program. Then second is the task-specific programming is autonomous, while you play with the robots. So that's a new way of doing programming. Now I'll give an example that how you can, we're doing that every day. When we interact with your children, interact with your colleague, you are somehow doing programming. But this way of programming is very different. Even your mom, your dad, and even they don't know how to program, even including your kids. They are programmed robots. The robots are humans. And you can interact. In this case, that I will give a toy, then say, hey, what's the name, what's the size. Then the information was transmitted through interactions. So it's a future mode of programming for intelligent robots and machines. Now, you may have seen many interesting results coming up in robotics, because robotics is coming very strong nowadays. It's increasing its market. Machine can generate action well. Now, so you can see that over here you have a Sony robot that can dance. But it's kind of misleading in terms of capability. The human experts probably know that the robot machine are poor in perception and cognition, in the sense that actions in these kind of settings are not environment very sensitive. Okay, because they just dance. Okay, it's a programmed sequence, and they don't interact with each other. They probably interact with the floor. That's it. The floor is flat. Okay, there's no interesting going on, and it's limited application domain for these things. It's good for entertainment. Very good for entertainment, for shows, but will not be able to interact with the human environment so that you can issue commands and the robot will interact with you according to context. So why is this the case? Because the hand designed, I probably turn down the volume a little. The human designed representation is very rigid. It's task specific, and the machine does not understand the representation, and machines is not able to go beyond your representation, okay, because it's a limitation of the representation itself. And the machine do not live in the environment. It live in the sense that it does not live in the physical environment while learn autonomously. The behaviors are programmed. Now, this is very different with the machines. Nowadays, with the human learning, where human is very much autonomous, while from infant to the adulthood, humans are interacting with the environment. But this kind of work has been going on over 15 years now. But there are two types of work that I would be very careful about. One is designed task-specific representation that simulate development. But representation still hand-designed and still very much task-specific. Okay? But this work is still very useful in terms of understanding the limitation and the power of development in a limited fashion. One example is Brian Scott at Yale University, Rock Lupin at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and Minoru Asada at Osaka University, and many others. So they simulate certain aspects of child learning, give them attention. But it's not epigenetic development in a more biological sense, in the sense that representation is designed, give example, Markov model, where nodes are designed in terms of which node represent what. But still very useful, I say this is a kind of stepstone towards a more autonomous development. The second category, what I call self-generated task-specific representation, that's characteristic for biological development. There are two groups. One is our EI group at the MSU, and another Gerardo Edelman at UCSD. But the goals are very different, actually. Our goal is for engineering applications. So there are many engineering domain problems we need to perform reasonably well in order to get powerful applications. But Edelman's group, they are very much for the verification of biological theory. So certain theory they verified in a small scale, they are ready, so they are happy. So it's not meant for engineering applications. You can see that it's not their goal. So you can see that the performance are very different. They tend to demonstrate in a controlled environment, give example, block word. So the second category is epigenetic development. Now, the why we say that the epigenetic programming is for generating representation through interactions. So gene is a program in the fertilized egg. Then it goes through a process development from single cell to multiple cells. Later on become a fetus, then birth. After birth, then you develop from a child to the adult. You have a physical development. Then along this process, the brain is developed. Then the mental development takes place. The mental include perception, cognition, motivation, emotions, and higher level capabilities. Now this is called mental. So this developmental process is very much interactive with the environment. Now I'd like to give a picture, and this picture actually I haven't seen anybody present it, because many people study biological brain. But very few has a model that cross-scale. Cross-scale means that brain is a grand puzzle with many, many levels. And many people probably concentrate on a single level, their model is not very, very correct. So for example, at a gene, you have a specified development. But gene is not itself is not sufficient for development. So you have neurons, the basic elements of computation in the brain. Although other cells probably used for metabolism, like glial cells, okay, astrax, for example. Then the circuits, neuron connected with become circuits, local circuits put together, you get into the cortex. Those are the cortical regions in the brain. The next level will be pathways. Different cortical regions linked together will end up with pathways. Then the multiple pathways in the forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain, and spinal cord. You have a brain scale computation and development. Then once you have a brain, then you have an experience. The experience including prenatal development. Before birth, the retina, for example, already generates spontaneous activities. So spontaneous activity does not need any stimuli. It just generates by itself. Those signals are very important to guide the wiring of the brain, because without signal, the brain will not wire itself. So the signal from the source is extremely important. Then once you have an experience, is a prenatal experience and a postnatal development experience. Then with this experience, then you have a brain functions. Many people say, hey, can program certain functions, but think about how brain acquire its functions through interaction with the environment. So this multi-skill puzzle, many psychologists probably were concentrated on experience, for example. They observe the behavior of children, and they probably link some literature in the neuroscience, but their model tend to be very crude. For example, they use Bayes' network model, but Bayes' network was not really tied to the neuronal computation. They are not supported by neuronal computation. And we try to link this one in our model. And another level that neuroscientists are typically doing the cortical level through observation and the neural circuit level to model the spike trends. But there are very few who look into the pathway level and brain level, because the amount of work is certainly too much for a group of neuroscience to work in a large scale. So you can see that we have a problem of disjunction of the levels. Okay, because of the nature of the problem actually. But in fact, this is exactly what our engineer, okay, our engineer can play a role. Because engineer can read the material in the neuroscience, and we can read material in psychology. Then we have mathematical tools. We can put a model through hypothesis and testing. Testing in terms of the robots, testing by simulation, and testing maybe through the data, the available new data later on in the neuroscience. So the model I'm presenting right now, and I try to link all those models except the genome, because the genome right now, the coding, we don't know very much. We don't know how much, what material was coded in the genome. So we like to simulate the functions, but not the genome coding itself. Okay. Now, because this is Microsoft, I like to mention a little bit about the PC and the robots. And PC is a general purpose, and robots can be general purpose, but not now, unless you do development. It's very clear. If you don't do development, you never be a general purpose. It's limited because the representation is a hand program. And once the hand program representation, you cannot go beyond other tasks. And PCs are simple and have a few sensors, but robots has very complex, has many, many sensors. PC has a simple few effectors like printers. Okay, those are simple effectors. But robots are very complex with many, many effectors. You can have voice synthesizers, you can have motors, you can have hands, arms, legs, and also actual internal effectors. I will get to that. Okay, in short, a robot need to act into the brain itself. Okay, so effect is actually inside the brain, and also need to sense the representation of the brain. So the internal sensors. So those sensor effectors are very different from the PC and robots. And PC are programmed by hands. Okay, mostly we play by hands right now. But hand programming leads to slow progress in robots. I think that very clear right now, and robotics has been around for many years. It generates a lot of activities, but the application is still very limited because program complex robots in open environment is still by hand. And the market is huge for PCs. That's how Microsoft and other companies are doing very well. But the market will be explode for robotics if robots are epigenetic, because robot is able to learn in your working environment, in houses, and with your friends. So lesson we learned in the past is that biological brain using simpler methods, much simpler than all the model we know so far actually. The more efficient computation actually, because better method means more efficient computation. Smaller storage and grounded in physical world, it's real-time computation, it's incremental, and self-general representation. All those things, only very few studies including all those. So what I can predict is that no major breakthrough are likely using non-developmental method, and we need to look into how biological methods to handle development, although we are not required to do every details because it's not practical even in a reasonable time frame to get all details of biological development, but we should get major mechanism working. That alone probably will be sufficient to generate breakthrough in robotics and human-machine interactions. Now I want to give example of the biological learning. Why biological learning is so attractive, and not attractive for just neuroscience, but also attractive for computer engineers. Now, genomic equivalence principle is a principle that resulted from Dulwich sheep. Okay, it's a cloning result we already know. Many people already know, but not many people probably know all the details. Basic genomic equivalence principle means that each cell carries all the genetic information. Every cell, there's a neuron. It carries the entire set of genetic information. In other words, it's sufficient to lead development of an individual. Then the consequence of computation is very deep actually. Development is cell-centered. So there's no genome is dedicated to the more than one cells. Okay? Each cell has its own genes. So gene is cell-centered. Gene is not dedicated to two or more neurons. Now this leads us a very different thinking in terms of understanding how the brain develops and adapts and learns. So the consequence is each cell needs no extra learner. Each cell needs no covalent match, just give an example, for the input synapses, for example. No partial derivatives. That if you partial derivative, you need to have an external learner to compute that for you. Each cell display or adapts or computes in real time. They're called in-place because computers or signal processors in place is responsible for learning and development. So that's the in-place idea. There has been a lot of studies in developmental psychologies, and those results clearly show that the brain functions are not there right after birth. It needs stages of development from early sensory-motor stages to pre-operational to concrete operational. Then you can get to a high-level capabilities like formal operational. In that case, that the reason is not necessarily it's just abstract symbol from symbol, but rather it's grounded from sensors and effectors. So issues why autonomous mental development. In fact, that developmental mechanisms seems simpler compared to a fully developed system. Okay, simpler to understand, and lower level, more systematic, and task independent, because the same mechanism can apply to different sensing modalities, different tasks. That's extremely powerful. And relieve human from programming very difficult and challenging tasks like vision, speech, language, and complex behaviors, including things like consciousness. I think the consciousness can be only reached through autonomous development. If you program a representation, the machine is not conscious because it did not understand your representation. And user-friendly machines and robots and human-machine interaction becomes really, really grounded and will happen in the real world. And also can have many, many applications in industrial settings like manufacturing systems. I will mention a little bit when I present experimental results. And help to understand human intelligence. Because we, computers, engineers, can model how mind develops, then those models are very useful also for science. So our neuroscientists are very interested in working with us. So it's like two-way traffic, not just the neuroscience is feeding us. We also need to feed back to neuroscience and the psychology. So for development, we probably don't need to handle physical development because we can design the body, and design body is easier for engineers, but it's very difficult for biology. You know that. Okay, biology, there's no other way. They can start with a single cell, then can have multiple cells, and this process is tremendous complex. That's why many people say that there are many, many Nobel Prizes will come out from a field called cell signaling, because the cell interact with others, start to form different types of cells and from different tissues. And those very detailed results, we probably don't need to wait to understand before we can do development, because we are interested in mental part. Now people say, hey, you have development. What's the big deal? It's machine learning. I get to that. Why? It's not traditional machine learning. And at the beginning, given you say your supervisor give a task, you build a machine, you are given a task T, and you also understand EC, which is ecological condition, okay? And you, the human programmers, H, you build an agent A. The agent A may include some machine learning phase over there. So you have to do machine learning but task specific, because given task T, you design the presentation. So this developmental phase is manual. The human is in loop of development. Then you once you are finished development, basically machine is almost ready because the task specific. Then you turn on the machine basically sense and act to interact with the environment. Okay. The development is very much finished. Maybe improve certain aspects, certain parameter of system, but development is very much finished because this is a task-specific machine. The autonomous development that our human is doing every day, okay, is very different in the sense that the genome does not have a task to start with. Given ecological condition only without task T, and for machine, the human designer will design an agent. This is a developmental agent A. Then the human will give birth to this developmental agent by turning on its power. So before that, you have a construction programming phase. But when you do programming, you don't know the tasks that the robot will end up learning. And why don't you know? You don't know because you don't know the environment. The environment is related to task. There are many, many things from simple to complex tasks that the machine will learn. There are so many open-ended. You should not be able to say, hey, anticipate fully. Then I know all the constraints and I design the representation. It's just like after at the birth time, your mom does not know you will be engineer or medical doctor. Okay? Your mom don't know. It comes out later. So tasks come out later. So task is like, play around with the robot so they can move around and can start to learn audition, vision, and language maybe. Then later on you can do specific training, go to robot school, for example. And robot school will enable our robot to have specific tasks, performing skills. So this phase is autonomous. The developmental phase is fully autonomous. So this is totally different between the traditional machine learning and development. What's the major difference from these two diagrams? The difference is the T. Whether you are given a task or not given a task. So many students was asking me, what's the major difference between development and machine learning traditionally? Is development is task non-specific. In other words, that representation, internal representation for tasks must be fully autonomously generated by the gene programs or developmental programs. Now, in about 15 years ago, many people probably was talking to me, including my good friends. They said, development is the myth. You won't be able to do it. But now we have so many years work along with others, then we are very clear that the computation environment, and I will mention some of the major works that enable us to move ahead and to generate revolutionary results along with you guys. There are 8 necessary conditions for development. The environment must be opened, has to use high-dimensional sensors like cameras and auditions and microphones, and it has to be online, it has to have real-time speed, it has to be incremental, it has to handle one-shot learning, because if you iterate too many times, then it will not be able to make decisions. That's not a human brain is working. And mixed learning modes, not just a supervised learning mode and reinforcement learning mode. And I also mentioned another learning mode with the communicative learning, where the learning is through communication. Okay, this is a new type of learning that's possible only through development and need to scale up to very large memory. So existing works typically, including some of the work I mentioned earlier, they aim at part of that, but not all. And our work is aimed to design for all those requirements. Now that's the motivation. Now get to the architecture. Now architecture is a task very challenging actually. There are many studies that have been published in artificial intelligence, including those well-known results like ACTA-R and source. And those models are very useful for us to design and understanding mental architectures, but those models are limited in the sense they are very much bypassing perception. Okay, so bypassing perception, so they end up with a symbol to symbol. That's very much limited in terms of the capability for robots to live and evolve and adapt in the real world. And brains, there are many pathways, and the lowest pathway is spinal cord. Then you have a high brain and mid-brain pathways. All those areas have parallel pathways. They have a forebrain that has a higher degree of interaction, but they are still parallel pathways. So at least there are many different pathways in different cortical areas. And the issue is how those different pathways from sensor to effect are organized itself. There are pre-processing. For example, I'll give the vision processing from retina. You get the LGN, you get the entry point of the forebrain. This is not a forebrain, cortical regions, that's V1. V1 is the entry point when two eyes information start to converge. In LGN, they have single eyes only. Then the pathways, I give a picture of a pathway. What's the pathways going on? There are 4 areas, frontal areas, parietal lobe, and occipital lobe, and temporal lobes. Those lobes are not necessarily linked to specific tasks. Actually, they are not, and because each pathways may be different tasks. But we can look into 4 types of pathways. Okay, that's good for us to have a snapshot of the entire picture of the architecture. One is the sensory pathways. That's for touch. Okay, you can see that they have branches and end up at the frontal cortex. And I will mention this pathway, basically I will get in the frontal cortex as a one converging point. But there are at least 2 converging points in the brain. Okay, do not look at the frontal cortex as a converging point. So touch go to frontal cortex, visual will go to this is called ventral pathway and the frontal cortex, and you have dorsal pathway also reach to the motor cortex. And if, that's visual pathway. The auditory pathway, you have auditory cortex linked to this area and eventually we'll get to the frontal cortex. And the motor pathway is different. Okay, motor pathway is exactly the sensors. Those are the effectors. So motor pathway is downstream, actually. So from a frontal cortex, free motor area to motor, then to midbrain, hindbrain, and spinal cord. So now this diagram gives you a one large area convergence. That's frontal cortex. Touch go to frontal cortex, visual go to frontal cortex, auditory go to frontal cortex. Then from the frontal cortex, you start to go downstream. Okay, sensory motor go to upstream, frontal cortex, then downstream. Downstream have a motor cortex. That's the one. But according to the recent studies in neuroscience, there are other three major areas of convergence. Okay, not just frontal cortex. One is spatial temporal area. This area. Okay, this area. Another is thalamus. Okay, thalamus. Thalamus is very important to value limbic system. So, whether I get a danger or not. Okay, is it danger? Converging point. Okay, so three major areas of a pathway. Now get to the picture later on in terms of how you can handle these kind of three convergent areas. Now, then operationally, the brain is basically doing prediction. Okay. Just prediction. The last context including sensation and actions. Then you have a spatial temporal context. This is time t now. Then you predict the next context, maybe multiple, that include both sensation and actions. And you're predicting in real time. Now, I have been mentioning this work earlier, I think at this place a few years back. I'm not sure though. But I just briefly mention the architecture. This is the lowest architecture, type 1, is observation-driven Markov decision process. Many people use Markov decision process, probably you know, using reinforcement learning example. But their Markov decision process is designed. Each node represents what? Like this corner, this is tree section. So if you design the representation, you come up with a probability to start with, right? But once you have that one, you cannot go beyond a new word. Why? Because nodes already designed. Okay. And our brain can be modeled by Markov decision process. But this Markov decision process is self-generated. From what? From observations. So observation-driven Markov decision process. I did not invent this model though. It was published early in the early 70s by mathematicians. Okay? So this model fits our understanding of our brain architecture very well. So you have last context with the sensor 1, sensor 2, each cycle corresponding to a pixel, for example. Then you have an effector. Effector have a temporal sequence because the single frame prediction is not enough. Okay? Then you put this to spatial temporal context. Then you map to the brain. The brain doing is regression. The regression will predict the context. This is the simplest, is just predict what you need to do. Okay, this is the action part. And this R is regression, L is long-term memory, V is value system. And why we need a value system? Value system because this is task non-specific. In order to learn well, you need to motivate. The value system is the motivation. Give example, pain avoidance and pleasure seeking. That's our baby, you know that. Without that mechanism, our baby will not learn at all. Okay, so that's very important. And this value system actually later on is developed. It becomes the higher goals, not just pain avoidance and pleasure seeking. Then type 2, type 5, I go quickly because time limit. And the type 2 will add action attention selection. Without using attention selection, no system can be very efficient. Because if you don't use the attention selector T, you can only base on statistics. But statistics is not sufficient. Why? We need a new environment, and you don't have statistics. You must use attention selection based on your old experience. Then apply the new experience, old experience to new setting. That attention selection part T. Then in motor part M for the type 3, because motor is like you do the planning. Without motor representation, you just have a generation of action. You just released it, then you cannot do planning. Okay, you can do rehearsal. Then type 4, I will get to that, it's a SAS model. Self-aware, self-effecting. In the sense that sensor and effecting is not just for external environment. And AI architecture has this model that was major flaw actually. You need to also sense the internal environment, which is the brain. Okay, not the body. Okay, body external. The brain internal representation is what the part of your target for perception, and also need to act on it. For example, you need to sense what brain is thinking. You need to act to it so that it can change its attention selection, for example. Okay, so this is both sensing and effecting on the brain. That's type 4, self-aware, self-effecting. Then type 5, developmental. Because if you program every component over there, then you have a static system. You won't be able to move on to new tasks and learn new things, or even complex things. Okay, like human environment is very complex, but developmental in the sense that it's developed. It's adapting with new tasks. So I get back to the self-aware, self-effecting in the brain. In fact, the brain has projection not just feed forward. It has projection, for example, from motor area to the sensory areas, or from thalamus to sensory area. It's attention. Okay, and action is applied not to the external world just, but also to your internal thinking. That's how thinking takes place. I'll get to that later on in terms of mental architecture, enables thinkings. And these sensory motor pathways that I said earlier will not be sufficient for many sensors, many effectors. So you need to put these things together. They end up with level 6. Type 6 is a multi-level. And DOSASE is a developmental observation-driven, self-aware, self-effecting. MDP is Markov decision process. I tried to link it to mathematics so that we can use many results we know in mathematics to do analysis, to understand complex object like the brain. Now this diagram is, I think it's going to help us very much understanding this organization of the brain. In fact, this left side is a sensory hierarchy. The right side is motor hierarchy. And this sensory hierarchy needs to handle different sensors. You have vision, audition, and touch. Those are each square here is called unit model area. One sensor type. But each sensor here have many elements, have many pixels already. Then you have a bimodal area. Bimodal area in the brain tends to be much smaller than unimodal area, much smaller. The reason is that coordination between different sensory modality is weak. A good example is lip reading. For example, in the cocktail party, it's so noisy, I cannot hear well, but I do hear you, you're talking, but I look at you, look at your lips. So M and N, auditory is ambiguous, but I look at your lip reading, I heard it. But actually you did not hear it, you also watched it. So lip reading. And lip reading in the bimodal area, very well. But the trimodal area, but up there, it's even smaller, because the 3 sensing modalities all coordinate is very, very unlikely. So we are safe to say that we probably should MILN concentrate in the unimodal area. Then this hierarchy is organization of different cortical areas. For example, this is V1, V2, V3, you have A1. Here you have a submotor sensory cortex here. Then here is motor areas. Motor area you have muscle 1, muscle 2, muscle 3. But in robotics people, they tend to say, hey, I have a representation of a different model so that you end up with the optimization criteria. But actually, brain is not specifically doing optimization to minimize the deviation from a given trajectory. The trajectory is not given, actually. So it's different motors here. They start to develop their coordination. So this is single model, single model, but this is bimodal. So motors start to link together when you do this many times. Just like walking. If I walk many times, at the beginning my walking is really clumsy because I'm paying attention to individual motors. Later on, when I do many times, those coordination was developed in the motor cortex area. Then I can issue command for multiple motors instead of individual ones. Now, between the sensory hierarchy and the motor hierarchy, there's projections. There's two-way projection. And by the way, all the arrows here are mostly bidirectional, not unidirectional. I get to that, okay, later on. But this, from left to right, is called association cortex. Association cortex is very extensive in the brain. What they do is associate the feature outputs, basically, to the actions. Okay, but there's no monolistic representation. I agree with Ronnie Brooks and along with others. Okay, so there's no place as a central location for representation of the word. Whether I have a 3D surface of the desk, for example, you don't have that. Okay, all the representation is distributed. And why? Just simpler, faster, more efficient. Okay, and get to that. Okay, if you want to build a 2.5D representation, you probably spend the entire life. You won't get to that satisfactory result. Then the brain does not do that for good reasons. So the machine can think. Now, when we talk about development, we're really excited because we are not talking about just perception and cognition. We're talking about thinking. And in thinking, you have last context and prime context, right? And each prime context have different value, for example. And what actually the architecture allows you is the brain is doing what they're doing is association. Do you remember I said association? Basically has a feature extraction, then you have a distributed representation, you have association cortex, then leak to the prime context. But this is external in terms of sensation and action. It's what you sense from outside world. Did I say the SAS, S-A-S-E, self-aware, self-effecting? That's internal. So you have internal context in terms of sensation and action. Then you put together, you have 4 arrows here. High dimensional. What do we need? Attention. Attention selection is very much neglected in robotics. You talk to many robotics people, okay? They talk about the actions. They don't talk about perception very much. Why perception is high dimensional? But not just external, but also internal. You need attention selection, then you attending the part that you are relevant to the task. Okay, I look at laptop right now, it's related to what I'm doing. If I look at the entire image, I got nonsense because this entire image is new to me. I have to look at this area. Now, this is intelligence. So one big story that has been largely neglected is that intelligence is very much attention. Okay, attention. Attention embed your experience. Attention is used to map to the primed internal context. You did not release that, okay? You just put it in, and architecture allows you to do that. Then you put this link together. That's exciting. Then how many things like thinking, like generalization, skill transfer, I get to that. All from the same architecture. That's why I say it's very exciting, okay? We are talking about the same architecture for all the tasks they can think about it, okay? So basically you have a mapping brain, the external context, internal context, then you depend on what you put in the internal context. If you pay attention to internal context all the time, you are doing thinking. If you pay attention to external context, you are doing task execution based on your established skills. But you can mix external and internal context. That's what you do typically, okay? I'm doing the work right now. So I'm thinking, I'm paying attention to my internal context, also pay attention to external context because I have to act on the real world. So thinking mostly was mixed. Pay attention to both external context and the internal. Internal in the brain, okay? Remember, okay, we always talk about internal means the brain. And sometimes you can let me think. You shut off the external, then you close your eye. At that time, you are doing internal thinking. And this model allows you to do that. And we already showed that we can accomplish this kind of thinking process. Now, autonomous planning can be carried on. You know, people say that you do planning. I have a different program for planning and replanning. Think twice. Brain use the same architecture. So planning basically you have a plan context, a last context, plan context, last plan context, last plan context. This is a sequence. If you already experience, you can link this way. Then you can have plan B. If my action, instead of choose a plan action A, I can say primed action B. Then from prime action B, you get a different primed context. So this linking get to a new context. This new context different from this context. Context A, context B are different. Then you can organize your thought. They can carry out in different time scale. Okay. Then look at A and B. It's what you like. Then you choose the action. Now this sequence is carried out by the same context, okay? Same architecture. So we don't need another architecture for planning. We don't need another architecture for decision plan making. We don't need another architecture for thinking. So that's an architecture issue. Very exciting. And some result I will present in and follow this architecture's paradigm. So now get to some detail of the developmental program. How you really can make that happen. Now this is something that, a big story, but if we look into biology closely, and I'm fortunate to work with neuroscientists and psychologists for many years, and by example I have been spending last year with Malinkaka Sir at the Department of Brain Cognitive Science at MIT, and also worked with closely with other researchers like Tommy Poggio and some others. A grand challenge is representation. But if the representation is not good, you cannot generalize. You have distributed representation, but cannot generalize. So many well-known researchers already spend tremendous amount of time to talk about invariant. What do you mean invariant? You need to have similar representation for outputs that are similar, basically, and not too much related inputs. So Fukushima, 1980, had neurocognition, but hand-designed architecture, hand-designed it. And invariance is through different examples. They put different examples, they channel into the same cortical, same plane, neural plane that he called it, okay? And very tedious. So move on, he will not be moved on to more examples, because immediately boggle down, quickly, very quickly. And we did the same thing, actually, motivated by neurocognition in 1997. I said that instead of hand-designed architecture, I grow it. So we grow neural planes, strong sensory input, so sensory-driven, actually. But immediately I realized, once I look at it, we are the first work, actually, we talked about learning in computer vision. We're the first paper, actually, talk about learning in computer vision, this perception. And it's invariance through blurring, very much like idea of the Fukushima, because the later cortical area, that resolution in the cortical plane becomes lower. So it's kind of blurring. But we immediately realized there's a problem. You cannot just rely on simplified blurring. It's not blurring. Okay, I'll get to that. It's the statistical relevance, not blurring. Because blurring, there's no statistics involved. Okay? Then we have a Poggio, 2006, actually, he published in PAMI. He had a very interesting network, the feed-forward network. It tried to reach invariance through max, because each cortical area, you have only one neuron can fire. So once the neuron can fire, then whether you left fire, right fire, up fire, basically same max. Okay, this is a very good idea. But restrictions, you have only one object. You can not have multiple objects, because you have max, you have only one object. Then you cannot do figure ground separation. Did you remember we talked about attention? So attention is a big challenge. Then we have in 2007, we developed recurrent network, not just feed forward, because all those are feed forward. We have a recurrent work. We are the first book that biological motivated, that handled top-down projections. And we use the top-down projections for supervision based on the models that are published by neuroscientists. And it can handle, now this is very exciting, handle general invariance. We're not talking about shifting invariance alone. We're not talking about orientation invariance or size invariance alone. These single mechanisms, maybe multiple, okay, could be used to generate many different probability invariants. Okay, size, position, orientation, if there is, okay, and align expressions, okay, all those things, spatial and temporal. Now get to the how you can handle learning. It's you can interact with the machine only through sensory factors. That's the limitation, okay, and also the power. Development allows you only access to assess the machine indirectly through sensory factors, but not the brain. The brain is closed. That's how the mom can teach you. Your brain is closed to your mom. Otherwise, mom won't be able to understand, teach you. She cannot understand your internal representation. Okay? So this is both limitation and the power. And then there are two types of sensors. One is the biosensors, like pen sensors and sweet sensors. Those sensors you already had value at birth time. So link to the value. The many people in reinforcement, it's the reward channel. I don't think it's correct. It's just a sensor. The sensor has value at birth time. Because there are many, many reward channels. Okay? You have pen sensor, you have sweet sensors, you have touch that. Later on, you can have unbiased sensors. Unbiased sensors, you don't have value associated at the birth time. But later on, you develop values, whether this view is pretty, whether this setting is what you like. Okay? So this is basically value system is very much develop biasness in the bias sensors. Then you can also affect the effectors. You can hold the hands of the baby so that you can teach how to do actions. So using this mode, actually, we found out that traditional machine learning is not sufficient. Just supervised learning and reinforcement learning is not sufficient. So we need to expand it, refine our classification of the machine learning. There is S for internal representation, whether imposable by the designer, E for effector, whether it's autonomous or imposed, and B for biosensor, where biosensor is used. In traditional sense, whether reinforced learning is used or not. Use these three components put together, you end up with a 3 bits binary. You have 8 types. So traditional learning uses state imposable. Why? Because the state is a hand design. But if state means internal representation, this is interchangeable. Okay, state really means internal representation. And then state autonomous is developmental method, but you can combine effector and biasness. Give examples that you can impose the effector and give reinforcement. You can hold hands and do this and make it relationship. Don't do that. Okay? So you can combine supervised learning and reinforcement learning. So the old concept had a problem. You can combine it. And then this type 0 is really interesting, where effector is autonomous, means that you don't supply the action, but biosensor is not used either. In fact, most of learning in human, including babies, are of type 0. And only very few times that reinforcement learning is used, like the time you give food to your baby, for example, okay, or you get baby got hurt, at that time you get reinforcement learning. But most of the cases, the food is not given, and there's no pain, so baby is learning autonomously. I call it temporary dance. Okay, that's the type 0 error learning, and this learning related to the communicative learning. I will talk about it in a minute. So MILN learning modes, there are many people already know, non-associative learning, habituation and sensitization, classical conditioning, instrumental conditioning, and a many, many more complex type was classified as animal cognitive learning. All those learning models in developmental psychology tend to say is different types of learning. So people get really bogged down with detailed model, did not think about the unified architecture. And for us, we need to synthesize those learning so that we end up with a single architecture. And so there is a new learning mode that I would like to discuss right now is communicative learning, because all the models I mentioned over here did not mention communicative learning because they are psychological piecemeal analysis. Over here we have a mode, communicative learning, the type 0 learning. Communicative learning involves 2. One is language acquisition. Could be very simple language acquisition. Okay, this means left, right. Okay, you learn the left means what? Left hand, right turn. Okay, called left hand or right hand. So it's grounded. Then learning through language. After that, you don't really need to do supervised learning anymore. So supervised learning, when you're driving, if your coach hold your hand, turn left. The solution is provided at the effector end. It's called action imposed or supervised learning. But if a coach did not pull your hand, but the coach said that left turn. Now many people say that, hey, this is supervised learning. It's not. Because the information of solution is not provided at the motor end or effector end. It's provided at the sensory end. So it could be anything else. It could be irrelevant information. So if the information is provided from the sensory end, that's communicative learning. But you need to know the meaning of the sensory end information. That's why you need the language acquisition. But many people saw that this is supervised learning confusing. So they did not understand that human is not doing supervised learning. Humans are mostly doing communicative learning. Okay? So that's a very powerful learning because we're doing class. Okay? We don't really need to doing a supervised learning. We don't need to do reinforcement learning. We most of the time do communicative learning. Now get a little bit of the architecture of brain and the neurons. And if you look at it, in order to reach this kind of learning mode, we look into the computing elements, how that takes place. So you have a brain that have a cortical areas. Then you cut the area, you can see that, the thickness of the cortex has 6 layers. Very interesting, huh? The 6 layers, what do you think, how long I can finish any time?
I think you can go another half an hour.
Okay.
No, we can't. It'll take another,
I see.
another 10 minutes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So there are 6 layers. The 6th layer, in fact, recently has many detailed models coming up. The neuroscience is changing very fast. You know, if we talk neuroscience about 15 years, people say that most areas are not used, activated. Nowadays, so clear now, okay? Now, there are 6 layers of neurons. Those are called large pyramidal neurons that go across the layers. They have, each layer has different the process, growth process. Then many people know the neurons. This model basically have a synapses. They have a presynaptic inputs. This is X. Then you have weight. Then the response of Y is called post-synaptic activities.
John, I just got a correction. You can keep going all the way to 10:30 if you like.
Okay, thank you very much. Because there's so much result and I won't be able to cover sufficiently. Now, presynaptic activities, remember that, okay? Then the postsynaptic activities, then if we link these together, you have synapse, okay? That's the how the neuron computes, and I get to computing. If you look at only firing rate, then you have a presynaptic inputs, that's X. Then you have a synapse conductance, that's called the W, or we call the weight. Then you have a neuron, L, and that L including G. G is maybe non-linearity, okay? The nonlinearity is a sigmoidal function like that. Basically, if you have a background firing, you will not respond very well. Then you will fire very fast. Then it will not really matter too much because it's saturated. If you look at fire rate model, everybody understands it. Basically it's an input vector in a product with W, this is weight. Then maybe subtract a threshold. Then you have a sigmoidal function end up with firing rate Y. Okay. Nowadays, we understand the spiking, individual spikes timing is important too in the signaling between the neurons. So you consider S as spikes instead of firing rate. The S equal to 0 or 1. Then you have an exponential decay into lambda speed of decay, and I is the time, and this P is memory potential. If the neuron reach potential P, then it will fire a single spike. So this is batch computation not possible in the real biological systems. You really need to do incremental computation. So the previous synaptic memory potential, then they have decay one step by lambda. Then previous, this is the current 0 or 1, whether you have spike, they have a memory potential. The spiking model. In fact, we can relate these two models together so that we can be very specific in terms of the, we don't have to be very specific in terms of whether you have a firing rate model or spiking model because they are basically the same thing if we do it properly. So this memory potential and delta T is a sampling between the spikes. For spiking model, you need to have a very high frequency sampling frequency like 1,000 hertz. So the requirement is very high. But our vision typically about 30 hertz is enough, okay, because our retention of the eye is about 30 milliseconds. So this memory potential, then exponential, this delta T is the sampling period between two temporary samples. Then S is the current firing rate or spike. Then you have a memory potential. So this model can run across from 50 hertz to 1,000 hertz, from firing rate model to individual spiking models. Then with this model, we can look into sensory motor pathways. Now this is including the sensory pathways and the motor pathway. Now then look at how cortex process those signals. In fact, it's very interesting. No matter we do frontal cortex or motor cortex and visual cortex, they have all 6 architectures. And this is already known actually for many years, but the modeling becomes more and more detailed now. Okay, one of early research is Steve Grossberg at Boston University, and his model is meant mainly for explaining some visual phenomena like illusion, okay, like space filling. His model was not really meant for engineering performance evaluation. So we modified his model in terms of details, and we mainly from the results from neuroscience, okay, like Callaway's work at UCSD. So then the model, including Feller and Amanson's work at the Washington University at St. Louis. They are looking into anatomy, neural anatomy, to find out which area links to what. So this is like one cortical area, this is another cortical area. They plot different cortical area in the sensory hierarchy. Interesting, okay, that's very much our sensory hierarchy. It's a vision level, V1, V2, V3. Then at the height, depends on how high you are in terms of hierarchy. And they found out that if you are doing ascending, means feed forward connection, they call ascending, the origin is from surface layer and deep layers. Then you ended in layer 4 in the target area. So layer 4 is the input layer. There are some minor input layer in layer 6 too, but it's minor. Okay, I will explain it later on because layer 6 maybe it's statistically weakly related, so there's a connection over there. But layer 4 is the major input layer of the cortical area. This is lateral connection. Lateral connection basically you originate from surface layer and this is layer 1, not layer 1, but until layer 2, 3, and then here layer 5 or 6. Okay, then you get to all the layers, basically affect you if you are neighbors in the same layer. Then in the lower layer, this is called descending. Okay, you descend from top layer to the lower area. This is called descending projection or top-down projection. You originate from surface layer and deep layers, or just from deep layer, and you end in layer, surface layer or deep layer, but avoid layer 4. Now this is very important information. This is true for all the cortical areas. Very useful for us to model. Then why you have a single layer origin and a two layer origin and single layer origin and bi-layer origin? It turns out we look at the pattern and find out if these two areas are very close in the hierarchy, so V1, V2 for example, they're mostly single origin. You're very far away, like layer 1 up to layer 7, they still have projection. Then they are mostly bilaminar origin. Now my guess, hypothesis as a point is, basically the reason bilaminar origin, like this one, is the reason they are so far apart, then signal correlation are very similar between the superficial layer and the deep layers. The signals are very similar statistically, then those projections will be available. If they are very next to each other, then correlation between surface layer and deep layer are not very correlated into the next layer. So that's the statistical nature of the connection. This is only hypothesis because there's no biological or computational verification at this point. Then there is the cortical area. What about the structure of the cortical region inside? Very interesting. According to the model of Callaway, and turns out that the layer 4, did you remember I said the input layer? Layer 4 is doing feature extraction, okay, in an unsupervised fashion. Did I say that top-down projection or descending projection avoid layer 4? And layer 2, 3 are doing supervised learning because accept supervision from other cortical areas. So what's the difference between layer 4 and layer 2, 3? Supervision or non-supervision. But what about layer 4 and 5? Layer 5 and layer 6, I'm sorry. Layer 5 takes input from layer 2, 3 and minor inputs from layer 4 to inhibit the neighboring neuron of layer 2, 3. So in other words, layer 5 is helping layer 2, 3 for communication between neighboring neurons. Okay, it's called assistive layer. Similar layer 6, was doing similar things for layer 4. Do you see that? That connection will end up in layer 4 and with information from layer 4 and some minor information from layer 5. The reason that you have two layer input, I think, the mostly statistical correlation. If statistical correlated, then some minor connection will be starting from layer 5. Okay? But in a nutshell, it's very interesting. We are very clear in the sense that this model is very clear in the sense that layer 4 is doing unsupervised learning and layer 2, 3 are doing supervised learning. That's the take-home message. Then, that's why we see mostly simple cells in layer 4 and complex cells in layer 2, 3. Why complex cell? Supervision. Okay, once the supervision, you can start to detect motion, for example, okay, and the complex patterns. Now, with this model, we can link this. We can link the cortical region together, then form the sensory motor pathways. Then you can also have attention. I get to that. Okay, attention can project back to as a top-down signal to the olicortical areas, so you can do attention. You can also do other sensory input and locomotor area and get to the muscle. Now, from this point, I like to present MILN, Multilayer In-place Learning Network, that are motivated by the laminar architecture. It's a cortex model. So basically, I said that you have layer 1, layer 2, 3, layer 4, layer 5, layer 6. I did not mention layer 1, actually. I should. Layer 1, most of the axons. There's no cell body very much. So it's a place you have most of the signal, okay, like wires. Because so many wires that go through the cortex. And layer 4, I said that layer 4 is unsupervised learning, okay? So layer 2, 3 is supervised learning. And then lateral connection is handled by layer 6 for layer 4, and layer 5 you handle lateral connection for the layer 2, 3. So you can see the correspondence. And the same such action for the another cortical layers. Then you link this together. We have a cortical model of sensory motor pathway. What is important is that the supervision from the next layer will end in layer 2, 3, but not layer 4. Okay, that's the choice of the cortex. So it's descending only in the layer 2, 3. Similarly, if you have attention selection, they only end in layer 2, 3 or layer 2, 3, but not layer 4. So this is based on anatomy we know in the brain cortex. Now, if we consider that each layer, whether it's supervised or not supervised, then we have a general model of layers. We have layer 1, layer 1, layer 1. So they be either supervised or unsupervised. So each layer right now need to handle 3 types of connection: bottom up, lateral, and top down. Most network models that you know handling only lateral and bottom up, not top down. Okay, what is unique in this model is that we have a top-down projection, so you can have general invariance. So MILN, multi-level in-place learning networks, MILN that handles 3 types of connections. And I'll get to that first. Okay, I will get to the first 2 types first, then the supervision later. I'll talk about bottom-up projection and lateral first, then I'll talk about this connection. Now you can see that each connection will the weight multiplied by the source. WB is the weight, Y is the input, and WH is the lateral connection weights. H is the horizontal cells that in the same layer as this neuron. And A is top-down projection source. WT, T for top-down, is the weight for handling supervision. Okay, so let's look at the first 2 types. Now, first 2 types we talk about top-down. We put this aside first. We talk about lateral and top-down, bottom-up projection. So you have a pre-synaptic activity X. Then you have a post-synaptic activity Y. Post-synaptic activity will inhibit neighboring neurons. And why do we need to inhibit neighboring neurons? If we don't, then many neurons are firing. Many neurons are updating using the same input. Then you have a mess. They don't have feature detectors to detect different important features. So we need to have lateral inhibition. Basically, in other words, that fewer neurons will fire. Now, fewer neurons will fire not just at the sparse coding. The idea of sparse coding by David Field. David Field is a neuron doing lateral inhibition to so that firing neurons are fewer. But not just firing neurons are fewer, because once you fire, you start to use the input for updating. Okay? So closely related to what feature you detect. Give example, in biological, you have a heavy learning, I'll get to that, and lateral inhibition. Lateral inhibition allows you to have a fewer neurons to fire. So those black connections with black squares are inhibitory. Then these white triangles are inhibitory, are excitatory. It's positive. Inhibitory means negative in the sense that the more firing you have, the less the potential. Okay? And now you have, if you have C neurons, you divide the input space into C regions. Then over here you have 3 neurons, C equals to 3. Then input only 2, give them 2 connections. First pixel, second pixel, or first wire, second wire. Then the 3 neurons are competing. And it's how they compete. At the beginning, you don't know their weights, actually. The loads of each neuron are not known. But once you have input, you have the neurons that fire the most, because in the products get the lowest, get the highest. Then they fire the most, they are more effective to suppressing other neighboring neurons. Then other neurons, when after suppressing, it becomes less effective to suppress these winners, so the winner will fire. Then winner fire with the input to update this weight. This weight is represented, each neuron, the weight is represented by a vector here. Okay? The direction corresponding to the synaptic weight. The length of the vector corresponds to energy. Energy of all those samples, the plus all here, it means samples in the input space. And the vector length corresponding to the energy. Now, in fact, energy is one important contribution of a model I will talk about in a minute called lobe component analysis. But lobe component analysis has optimality. It turns out that, based on theory, that if you have the neurons, every neuron actually, was computing principal component of the area. Principal components, approximately. Okay? Why principal components? Because if the region of the sample that I fire, okay, to which I fire, corresponding to a region, and I want to represent those samples in the least minimal error sense. So then those are the samples, and the projection of this sample onto my vector, this is an inner product, input weights to the pre-synaptic activity projecting the post-synaptic activity. That's the projection. The error of this lens, you want to minimize this error in a statistical sense. Then you do a math. Okay, it's not very complicated. We prove that it's principal components. It's very much like a traditional principal component analysis, but it's restricted to this region. Okay, it's a local principal component. Then since it has optimality, then computation is limited. In the sense that we need to have in-place learning. So it's a CCI. CCI means candidate covariance free incremental. LCA means lobe. Lobe, L-O-B-E, it's a lobe. Okay, lobe component analysis. So our hypothesis or our modeling is that every neuron is computing lobe component based on the heavy learning and the lateral inhibition. That 2 mechanisms have been proved biologically. Okay, it's in place and near optimal. So at the beginning, that each weight just takes input for an initialization of a weight V. Each neuron has a V. Then it just computing the response, the vector input in the product and a Z. Z is the linear potential. Maybe you go to the Z or go to a sigmoidal, you end up in a linear firing rate. Then the lateral inhibition is simulated by winner takes all. You find out which neuron has the highest rate, you take the winner. So then you find the winner J, and only winner will update actually. I'll get to that why this is very useful for the new updated equation. This is the old weight of the winning neuron, J. And this Y is the input. This is called the pre-synaptic activity. Z is a scalar, its response is called post-synaptic activities. Based on the biological model that already has been experimentally verified many times, okay, spike in time dependent plasticity, okay, STDP. These two has to occur at the same time. This is the firing rate, this is the input. If they occur at the same time, this means the firing rate is related to the input. Otherwise, the input is not related to me. Okay? So I'm firing means input is related to me. Then this is learning rate. Everybody knows that. This is basically called learning rate. And W1 is new. Just this part. Okay? Why W1? We want to keep W1, W2 to add together equal to 1 so that energy of this response weighted input, this is called energy. This energy is estimated by the length of the V. Very simple. But a huge difference in terms of the convergence speed. Okay? And I'll get to that. So W1 equals, add W2 equal to 1. So these two put together equal to 1. Then this is the learning rate. Learning rate originally, if we don't talk about mu, 1 over n, this is the plasticity. And many people use this plasticity too. Okay, so this is not particularly new. But W1 is new. If W1 equal to 1 minus W2, so equal to this, you plug in this W1, W2 without mu, you plug in here. You immediately realize that V equal to average of this quantity, just average. Response weighted input, very simple. Now this one has been used in neuroscience many, many times. They're called reverse correlation technique. To measure what this neuron is doing. They measure response and measure the input stimuli and multiply together to see what this neuron is responding to. Okay? Now we use this one. This is not new either because the neural network model also does that. But the key thing is that if you have this put together, this is like scheduling of the plasticity, and this is scheduling of your old information, how much you should keep. Then you keep the energy. Now this energy leads us to principal component, because people don't talk about the principal component. And we'll get to the performance in a minute. I'd like to first talk about if mu equal to 0, then straight average.
You have only 3 more minutes.
I see. Then this W2 will go to 0. That's not what we wanted. Okay? Because the neuron is not is not plastic anymore. So we like to make mu to be positive. So forget the old data faster than straight average. So this mu is like at the beginning 0, so that because you don't have much data to straight average first. Then you will gradually change to 2 so that you become more plastic. You forget old data faster. Learning rate over here becomes 3 times, okay, as the original straight average rate. Then you continue to increase so that it can continue to be plastic. This is gene model of the scheduling plasticity. That's development basically. Neuron need to schedule the plasticity. Then LCA and ICA can compute. ICA is a model, the only model that proposed for detection of the neurons, and turns out to be LCA and ICA are the same. Very interesting. For super Gaussians, because natural image are super Gaussians. And there are 5 types you probably already are familiar with. Batch, block incremental, covalence-free incremental, and in place. And our models like type 5. And we compute the LCA and ICA method by Oja and Sajunowski type 2, Oja type 1 batch. And this is a number of samples, and this is the error. And our error goes down very quickly. Sajunowski work over the block incremental with block size 1,000 did not show a convergence yet at this large time point window. Oja method start to converge, but slowly. Our method is about 14 times faster. So in other words, our method, this is a synthetic data because we know it's a Laplacian cost, it's a super Gaussian. So we know the ground truth. That's why we can compute the ground truth and compute the speed of convergence. So LCA, in other words, is simpler, faster, less storage, and more accurate. All these things good things put together. And you know the LCA, independent component analysis, is very complex to compute. They need to compute high order moments. We don't even compute the second order moments. Okay, because neuron does not have space to store the covariance matrix of all the inputs. And it has to be very, very biologically proved. And we use natural images, and we developed filters. Those filters are very much like the filters that we observed in V1. Okay, each square corresponding to a filter. And with a natural image as input, and if we know as update, we also 3x3 neuron also updates. We end up with those orientation cells. So the orientation cells are very much like orientation field that we observed in V1. Okay? And this is not the same as the orientation map we observed in biology, actually. This is the weight print, not through the color representing orientation. Okay? So this is a more detailed representation. Now, then I got to the supervision. How supervision can be done? We use the, if this is the neuron, my output will go to the previous later neurons. And those later neurons in the next layer can supervise me, because if they fire, means that, my boss is firing, encourage me. So they will encourage me to increase my potential. So if I'm not winner, with supervision from my boss, for example, this is from motor neuron says this is firing, this is like the supervision, okay? Then I need to fire. So I will become firing. Once I'm firing, I also use the input to update me. So the input is not just the bottom-up projection, also including top-down projection. And this is the way W model is called fan-out model. So in other words, that this model is very, very interesting in terms of it's very simple, but it handles both supervised learning and unsupervised learning. And in-place learning is motivated by genomic equivalence, as we said earlier. So the output layer is very important now. Okay, before people did not know how to do the output layer. The output layer supervised decide actions. Then the supervision is going down from motor layer to the previous layer and previous layer. The earlier layer has less invariance, it's directed to the topic. Okay. The later layer has more invariance, and the last layer has total invariance. So that's the idea of the MILN network. So topology was developed based on the smoothness, and updating based on 3x3 neighborhood. Then we have a way of measuring the purity of the inputs. So each neuron, if responding to multiple classes, then the entropy is high. If responding to a few classes, entropy is low. So we use this entropy to model the purity, as I said in the experimental result. Those are the platforms we have been tested in. And some major, I will not be able to discuss all the publications, so those are the major work that you probably can read to. And turns out that purity, this is entropy. So unsupervised, supervised. So supervision allows you to go down the entropy. Do you see that? And then supervision allows you to reduce the recognition rate from if you have fewer neurons, then the resolution is not enough, so the reduction is more. If you already have very many neurons, then each layer, then the reduction is less because you already did pretty well. And this is timing. Timing is really fast. With the 40 by 40 neurons, we still came about 7 milliseconds for each update of through the network. This is a 3-layer network. So it turns out to be very, very fast because network is small. And we can also handle multitask learning, where first task is recognizing handwritten characters, okay, 0 to 9. Because we use the handwritten characters, you can see the class very well. Then we also use another task, which is even odd, supervised from the motor layer. First 10 between 0 and 9. The last 2 is even odd. You have 12 dimensional outputs, each dimension corresponding to a class. It turns out that if you learn the task 2 from scratch, those are the errors. This is the number of samples, okay? But if you use the task 1 first, then learn task 2, the number of errors, the error is smaller. Why? Because you have already internal representation. Internal representation, I'll get to that. And how representation, very interesting. This is probably, I should finish, look at the representation, because the key point of this talk. Each model here, each square here is a weight of the first layer neuron. So you can see how different prototypes of the handwritten characters. This is MNIST data. Okay? And this is neuron. And you can see smooth. Okay? It's smooth, very important. Nearby neuron represent similar features. These layer 2 neurons, this is the weight of neuron that link to those. So this put together, this multiplies this multiplies. You can get this weight. Although this is a composite weight, it's not really the single pattern you are talking about, because this neuron takes many patterns here, many patterns here. White, okay? But this gives you visualization. This is a composite weight. 0. This is composite 0. This is 2. This is 5. So from this composite weight, you already get some visualization. It formed class automatically. This is kind of invariance there going on already. You did not hand design it. You'll see it does that for you. And this next layer is the output is 0. Once 0 is input, you need to be high. This is supervised. And takes 3 major inputs. Takes this one, takes this. This is 0. Do you see that? And if I multiply this one to this one, you got that. If I move this one to, you got that. So you can see that this global pattern, those from this many pattern from here, okay? And relative weight for the layer 3 neuron, you can see that. Similarly, you can have 1, 3 types, 3, 2, 3. This is 4 or 9. 4 or 9 more. You see 4 or 9 very similar. So you need more resources. You can see that 4 or 9 need more resources. And this is even and odd. You have 0, 0, 2, 0, 4, 4, 6, 8. All those representations there. We did not design it. Everything is automatically formed. And this is odd. 1, 5, 3, 9, 7, 1. So this is the power representation. You do not get into the problem domain, task domain. But self-organizing takes place. Not just SOM as a supervised learning, unsupervised learning, SOM and unsupervised learning. Well, the top-down projection is supervised. It's generally invariance. There are some comparison with the feed-forward network, radio basis function, SOM, cascade correlation learning architecture, supporting vector machine, in our previous IHDR, and this new one, MILN. I will not have time to explain the details of the comparison, but one thing that's very important is that it is only network that has desirable properties for development. And I probably have some video, but I won't be able to show all because time is up. Basically, with this framework, we can handle reinforced learning, supervised learning, communicative learning in the same mode. Same program learning with mixed learning modes.
Act, since it has not yet associated what it hears with an action.
And open. And open.
Association
so you can interact with the robot.
With its action.
Then you can reinforcement with good pattern, bad pattern.
Various learning
you can also
can occur at the same time.
Later you start to
in
talk.
the supervised learning
already
mode,
learned.
the
So this is very interesting human-machine interaction actually, right? Where we interact with the machine starts to get the meaning. Very much you talk to kids. Kids get it.
Through imitation.
So this is autonomous learning.
Right.
So this is like holding your effective. This is supervised learning. But when you supervise, you talk to
good and bad senses.
And this is reinforcement. So you can call it good pattern, bad pattern. Instead of letting it play, but sometimes occasionally you give sports, give food, and electric shock, for example. And we use a remote keyboard with bad button, good
the cell robot
is doing that, and with the food,
according to its
so once it's doing well, you can let it go.
That it has developed over time.
Good.
If it does something that
over here you can see that this is the good button, bad button press.
To encourage the action
this is the sound signal input. And those are the 5 motors. You look at the output.
Says
this is right.
Then
you sometimes you encourage. You're not right. You just punish. Use the bad button, for example. Then after that, you can
language learning.
Use
a human can teach the cell robot through verbal.
And this is with perception. Okay, very different from the robotics demonstration you see from Sony robots or some other
mode of learning.
You can see walking, whatever. But this is motor. Their motor is very low dimensional. You know, use reinforcement learning. But we are talking about
in the same autonomous
context-sensitive action.
We call this kind of learning communicative learning.
In the sense of a sensory input.
And an image of communicative learning is that using recently acquired concepts, humans can effectively teach more new concepts and behaviors to the robot.
Then start to act
Such an
while learning.
autonomous, open-ended, online learning
with the human.
realizes what we call autonomous cognitive and skill development.
Go.
Then you can have a
very
navigation
challenging perceptual
so
learning
previously
task
you can push around. Did
is
not use that video.
autonomous
Okay? You
navigation
can push
using
around so that is action
This
imposed,
is due
like
to the
supervised
high
learning.
dimensions of visual
Solution
sensors
is provided at the
and the
motor end,
complex
and later your
relationships
solution
between
is
pixel
provided through
intensity
sensory end.
and desired
Okay,
behaviors.
I'm start to talk to it. This is
Human
not supervised
teachers
learning
can
again.
teach the
Okay, it's
association
communicative
between verbal
because
commands and robot
it's talking to you.
actions first, using supervised or reinforcement learning. Then, the
So you
teaching of
compare it,
autonomous
it's like
navigation to the
input of the
robot
reward.
can be carried
Okay,
out
bad is like
through verbal
I'm
commands.
not happy. If I say
Similarly,
good, means
the human
so
can
it's related
issue
to value.
navigation commands along
It's related
with
to
good
value.
or
So
bad
it's
commands
very much
to speed up the
learning
learning
in
process
a very
while
rich
letting the robot
mode.
try on its own.
So the learning becomes very, very efficient. Because those tools that biology is using, human learning is using, we can use to take advantage of the learning so that learning becomes
the
very,
sail
very
robot
efficient.
makes fewer mistakes, and the human teacher says more good commands to encourage the successful behaviors.
Yeah, okay.
Bad.
So we also use range-based navigation. We can do navigation in range, laser range finders.
robot is
Same
navigating
thing
in the
like that. I have to submit. And we work with the GM to look into dynamic environment, collision avoidance. So not just a static range map, but also dynamic information using the network we are talking about. Then you can pass the vehicles cross over with different settings and with performance evaluation. And we can also handle different types of learning like classical conditioning, instrumental conditioning, and skill transfer. And we can learn visual audio at the same time. So those who are interested probably can take a look of the paper published. And I have to skip that model. In car setting, for example, we work with driver assistance with GM. Once you have a radar return, we want to recognize the types of object. This is our open environment. So without a development, it's much harder. And square here means attention windows. And we use a local to global feature using MILN to do this classification. Implication to the commercialization. Basically, PC, robot as a PC in the late 70s is very much robot, developmental robot in the current days. I think time is right in the same paradigm architecture path to global to the goals are largely known. And some results show clearly the feasibility. And the major result for future research is concentrating, I think, I predict mainly attention. The bottom-up attention and the top-down attention. And MILN can do that. This is the last slide. The secret that few know, okay, which could be very useful for industry. The developmental mechanism of the brain are likely not as complex as many existing AI programs. Okay. The mechanism I'm talking about so far tend to be simpler and computation very efficient, but very powerful. Connections are largely based on statistical activities. It's less dependent on the gene specificity. Gene probably tell you that you need to grow, for example. You need to link with others and how big you grow in terms of size, the cell types. But detailed connections are very much dependent on activity of the signal you receive from neighboring neurons. So that's the kind of it's like a global feature of biological connection that could be very useful for us. Sorry for running over time a little bit. And any questions?
I have some questions. Have you compared this
To particle filters or common filters, your performance, and versus like a UKF or a EKF filters?
Yeah, very good question, okay, related to the filter ideas. There are many filters actually, nonlinear filter and linear filters. I'll probably look at the common filter because they're well understood. Common filter original linear filters. And a common filter has a state space. Okay, so space is a global space. It's not local. So we have attention, so it's not with local features. Because states many information that related to the output through a linear transformation. Our case is not linear, it's nonlinear. And a common filter will not have a local minima problem because have a linear problem. But once the nonlinear problem, suddenly a common filter has a huge problem. And a common filter will not handle attention problem, for example. Common filter has all the input state will be used for products. for the generation of the action and prediction of the state space. Our case is use attention so that only context-sensitive elements are used.
I understand. However, have you compared, because the nonlinear Kalman filters, the advanced Kalman filters, and especially also particle filters that are much more, they care about the sampling that you just did. So they give you more accurate results the more samples you have, and they're dependent on the previous samples. Have you compared your performance? Because you can just look at one image and then just compare your performance to an EKF or a particle filter and see if you behave better?
Yeah, extended Kalman filtering was extended nonlinear problem, but the mechanism is still local gradient. Okay, local gradient is very much like a feed-forward with Baker-Cochran learning. Well, when you have a gradient, you have no control of which long-term memory you should update, which short-term memory, long-term memory cannot update. And feed-forward network, for example, is a more earlier version of the particle filtering, for example. With cascade learning architecture also handle partially this. Basically, you need to determine which part is long-term memory, which is short-term memory. If you do gradient descent, many people use gradient descent, including Kalman filtering method. Gradient method will forget long-term memory because it does not have a mechanism to keep that. And we do because we have decided whether you have a good match in terms of filing rate. Then the bad match guys will not update. Those are the long-term memory. And the good match guys will update because they are good matches. The brain does that. Brain does not fire everywhere. If it does not fire everywhere like gradient, then it means the brain needs to fire everywhere. Then the firing one will update and less firing will update less. But that's not the brain works. Brain will most of areas not firing so that they keep long-term memory. And also need to firing according to the scheduling we are talking about in terms of optimality. And those particle filtering, extended Kalman filtering, they do not have this scheduling in time. They don't have that one. So our model is much more efficient and much more powerful to handle complex tasks. And those models do not have attention model. And on top of that, we even have attention model in the sense that our model is not based on statistics purely anymore. It's also based on transfer of skills that you learned in the early days in a very different setting into a new setting where you have to deal with more complex tasks where statistics does not translate directly. So you need to do a skill transfer. Skill transfer is extremely important for development. There's a term called scaffolding. It's like I build the building, I need to do the scaffold. To facilitate your learning, when you are done, the scaffold can be taken down, right? So good questions. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.